Welcome back. This is BL Stories for You. I'm an indie author dedicated to original BL storytelling. From high school drama to fantasy worlds, everything you hear is written by me. I'm so glad you're here for this journey. Let's begin.
Several years earlier, before he became the polished and sharp-tongued man everyone knew, Polar had been nothing more than a hungry child searching through rubbish heaps for scraps. The streets of Umbraeth had raised him. His parents, too poor and too desperate to keep another mouth to feed, had abandoned him as a baby. He never knew their faces. Never knew their names. The only family he remembered was a gang of petty thieves who found him crying in an alley and dragged him into their world. They fed him only when he stole. They beat him when he failed. And when they realized just how clever he was, how quickly he learned numbers, symbols, and patterns, they became even crueler. Because intelligence was dangerous. A smart boy could leave. A smart boy could rise above them. So whenever Polar spoke about wanting to attend the Royal Academy, the only institution in Umbraeth where magic, science, and higher learning were taught, they laughed in his face. Academy, one of them mocked. You belong in gutters, not classrooms. You're a rat, another sneered. Know your place. Eventually, Polar could not bear it anymore. One rainy night, bruised and starving, he ran away. Life outside the gang was no kinder. He slept under bridges, stole bread when he could, and fought stray dogs for scraps. Other street boys harassed him constantly. Trash child. Beggar. Filthy orphan. He fought back whenever he could, but there were always too many of them. Still, he survived. Because surviving was the one thing Polar had always been good at. One afternoon, while wandering through the market with an empty stomach, he noticed a large crowd gathered around a decorated platform. Curious, he squeezed through the people. At the center stood a richly dressed man with an oily beard and smug smile. Beside him was a chalkboard covered in magical formulas and mechanical diagrams. The man puffed out his chest dramatically. I am the greatest scholar and scientist in all of Umbraeth, he declared loudly. The crowd murmured. He pointed proudly at the board. Whoever solves this problem shall receive 500 gold coins. Gasps broke out immediately. 500 gold coins was enough money to change a life. One by one, men and women stepped forward, trying to answer. Each failed. The scholar laughed at them all. Polar narrowed his eyes. He looked once at the board. Then twice. And within seconds, he knew the answer. His heart raced. Could it really be that simple? After so many failures, he hesitated. But hunger pushed him forward. I know it, he said. The crowd turned in surprise. A dirty, ragged street boy had stepped onto the platform. The scholar looked disgusted. You. Polar ignored the mockery and grabbed the chalk. In swift, confident strokes, he corrected the equations, adjusted the magical sequence, and solved the problem. Silence fell. The scholar's face went pale. The crowd erupted. He solved it. That beggar solved it. Polar dropped the chalk and held out his hand. My money. The scholar immediately recovered his arrogance. Money, he scoffed. You expect gold. You promised. I promised a worthy person, the man snapped. Not a gutter rat. Laughter broke from some in the crowd. Polar's fists clenched. You cheated. Remove him, the scholar barked. Two guards moved forward. Then suddenly. Stop. The voice was calm, cold, and powerful enough to freeze the entire square. Everyone turned. A teenage boy stood there dressed simply, accompanied by several silent guards. His dark presence alone made the air heavier. It was Kaenar. At the time, few had seen the prince clearly, but many had heard stories. The demon prince. The cursed heir. The boy born of darkness. The scholar, not recognizing him immediately, sneered. This is none of your business. Kaenar stared at him. I said stop. The man rolled his eyes. Who are you to command M? Before he finished, Kaenar's eyes suddenly burned crimson red. A terrifying force crashed through the square. The scholar screamed as invisible pressure slammed him to his knees. The crowd dropped instantly, trembling. It's him. The prince. The demon prince. People bowed frantically, terrified for their lives. Kaenar stepped closer, expression unreadable. You made a promise, he said quietly. The scholar shook violently. Yes, yes, your highness. Then honor it. The 500 gold coins were brought out immediately. Polar stared in disbelief. Kaenar turned to him. Then, to Polar's shock, the feared prince smiled faintly. I heard your answer, Kaenar said. It was brilliant. No one had ever called him that before. Kaenar summoned a glowing scroll from thin air and placed it in Polar's hands. Polar looked down. It was an official royal decree granting admission to the Royal Academy, free of charge. When you are ready, Kaenar said, come. Then he turned and walked away. Polar climbed down from the podium and stood frozen, clutching the scroll. His heart pounded wildly in his chest. That was the first day he ever felt something deeper than admiration. But Polar did not go to the academy. Not yet. Freedom had intoxicated him. He used his intelligence to make money through bets, challenges, schemes, and scams. He hustled nobles, tricked merchants, and talked himself out of trouble more times than he could count. By 15, he was notorious. By 18, he was a charming drunkard wasting himself in taverns, gambling halls, and parties. Men liked him. Women liked him. He liked no one. Then came Kaenar's coronation. The entire kingdom gathered to witness the feared prince become king. Polar attended only out of curiosity. But the moment he saw Kaenar seated on the throne, stronger, colder, and more magnificent than before, something stirred violently inside him. Without thinking, he took the old scroll and marched to the Royal Academy. At the gates, the officers laughed. An orphan. A street bastard. You don't belong here. They were dragging him away when another voice stopped them. What is happening here? Polar turned. Kaenar stood there in royal robes. The officers nearly fainted. Kaenar's gaze moved to Polar. Then, to Polar's disbelief, recognition appeared. You came. Polar could barely speak. You, remember me? Kaenar looked mildly offended. Of course. He ordered the officers to admit him immediately. Polar excelled from the moment he entered. He outperformed noble students, embarrassed tutors, and solved advanced magical engineering problems with ease. But prejudice followed him. Some students refused to sit near him. Some teachers ignored him. When examination season came, certain officials even tried to bar him from writing exams because of his birth. Broken and humiliated, Polar quit. He returned to drinking and wasting himself. Then one night, Kaenar found him in a bar. Polar still remembered it clearly. Kaenar sat across from him while he was drunk and miserable. You disappoint me, Kaenar said. Polar laughed bitterly. You expected too much. No, Kaenar replied. I expected exactly what I saw the day we met. Polar looked up. Kaenar's voice softened. You are one of the smartest people I have ever known. Polar went still. I believe you can help rebuild Umbraeth. Then Kaenar told him of his dream. To restore their dying kingdom. To bring back the sun. To do it, Kaenar said, I need capable people beside me. He looked directly at Polar. Will you help me? Polar's throat tightened. I would give you my life if necessary. Kaenar smiled. Then start by changing it. That night changed everything. Polar returned to the academy. He studied harder than anyone. He graduated as the top student of the Magic Science Research Department. In the years that followed, he invented magical tools, healing tonics, farming systems, light crystals, and countless devices that made life easier in sunless Umbraeth. He became respected, important, brilliant. And as for the feelings he had carried since youth, he buried them so deeply that even he stopped acknowledging them. He accepted one truth long ago. Kaenar would never be his. So he settled for the next best thing. To stand beside him, as a friend. Now in the present, Nelo laid on his bed thinking maybe he had misheard him. Maybe Polar had been too drunk to know what he was saying. Maybe it was nonsense. But deep down, Nelo knew it had been the truth. Drunk words often revealed what sober mouths hid. That realization left him strangely unsettled. As he lay awake later that night, he began replaying every moment he had shared with Polar since arriving in Umbraeth. He remembered the first time he cut his hand while helping Polar slice herbs for an experiment. Polar had clicked his tongue in annoyance, grabbed his wrist, and carefully treated the wound himself. "You're useless if you bleed out," Polar had muttered. At the time, Nelo had rolled his eyes. Now, he wondered if that had been care hidden beneath sarcasm. He remembered the nights he returned late from gathering herbs in the forest. Polar would be pacing the room pretending to be busy. "You took too long," he would snap. Yet there would always be hot food waiting. He remembered how they often stayed awake talking about nonsense, arguing, teasing, laughing over small things. And more than once, they had both drifted off to sleep in the same room after talking deep into the night. Nelo had started believing those moments meant something. Maybe more than friendship. Maybe more than companionship. Maybe Polar had felt something too. But now, it seemed he had been wrong all along. Polar's heart had belonged to someone else the entire time. To Kaenar. The thought stung more than Nelo wanted to admit. He sat on his bed, arms folded, frowning into the darkness. Ridiculous, he muttered to himself. Yet the hurt remained. Meanwhile, inside the palace, another restless night had begun. Kaenar tossed violently in bed, his breathing uneven. The nightmare came suddenly. He was standing alone in endless darkness. "Xianxia," he called out. His voice echoed, swallowed by the void. "Xianxia." No answer. He began moving faster, panic rising in his chest. Then, far ahead, a soft golden light appeared. A figure stood within it. As Kaenar drew closer, he froze. It was the beautiful glowing man from before, the same man he had seen in fragments, in visions, in moments between dreams and waking. The man stared at him with tears shining in his eyes. There was sorrow there. Longing. Something heartbreakingly familiar. He slowly reached a hand toward Kaenar. Kaenar stepped forward instinctively. Then suddenly, a massive clawed hand burst from the darkness behind the glowing man. It wrapped around him viciously. The man gasped as he was dragged backward into the shadows. "No!" Kaenar roared, lunging forward. But he could not move. Pain exploded through his chest, sharp and unbearable, as if something inside him were being ripped apart. He screamed. And woke up. Kaenar bolted upright in bed, drenched in sweat, breathing hard. Beside him, Aarhiya woke instantly. "Kaenar." He reached for him in alarm. Kaenar's hands were shaking. Aarhiya moved closer. "What happened?" Kaenar pressed a hand to his chest, trying to steady himself. "I saw him again." Aarhiya went still. "The man from before," Kaenar said, voice strained. The glowing one. He looked genuinely disturbed. He was standing there, crying. Then something dragged him away. Kaenar swallowed hard. And when it happened, I felt so much pain. He looked down at his hands as if confused by his own reaction. I don't understand why he is stuck in my mind. His voice dropped lower. Why does he feel so familiar? Aarhiya's heart clenched painfully. He knew exactly why. Because the man Kaenar kept seeing was him. Not Xianxia. Not the disguise. His true self. Somehow, Kaenar's heart had recognized what his eyes could not. Aarhiya wanted to tell him everything right then. Wanted to confess the truth. Wanted to end the lies once and for all. But Polar's warning rang loudly in his head. If the truth comes out now, everything may collapse. So instead, Aarhiya forced calm into his voice. It was only a nightmare. Kaenar looked unconvinced. Aarhiya gently touched his shoulder. Lie down. Kaenar hesitated, then slowly obeyed. Aarhiya picked up his flute from beside the bed. Soft notes filled the room, warm and soothing. The melody wrapped around the darkness like light slipping through cracks. Gradually, Kaenar's breathing steadied. His eyes grew heavy. Before sleep claimed him again, he reached out blindly and found Aarhiya's hand, holding it tightly. Only then did he drift off. Aarhiya continued playing, but inside, worry gnawed at him. The disguise spell was weakening. Kaenar's soul already knew the truth. And soon, his eyes might know it too. The next morning, sunlight never came to Umbraeth as usual, but the kingdom still stirred awake beneath its endless dark skies. Inside their small home, Polar slowly opened his eyes. His head throbbed from the drinks the night before, but something else bothered him immediately. He came out and saw Nelo was already awake. Usually, Nelo would grumble loudly, complain about chores, or throw some sarcastic remark the moment Polar moved. Today, he was quiet. Too quiet. He moved around the living room gathering herbs and tools without even looking at him. Polar sat up, watching carefully. Nelo. No response. Nelo, he repeated. Did I do something wrong last night? Nelo paused for only a second before continuing what he was doing. No. But the answer came too fast. Too cold. Polar frowned. You're acting strange. I'm fine, Nelo said flatly. I'm going out for a bit. He headed for the door. Polar immediately felt uneasy. Where are you going? Outside. That tells me nothing. Nelo didn't answer. He simply stepped out. Polar cursed under his breath and hurried after him. Outside, the streets of Umbraeth were already busy with merchants, workers, and wandering citizens. Polar spotted Nelo ahead, walking quickly like he wanted space. Before Polar could catch up, another figure stepped into Nelo's path. A tall man with slick back hair and an arrogant grin. Polar recognized him instantly. One of the noble brats from the Royal Academy. The same type who had mocked him, bullied him, and reminded him daily that no orphan belonged among nobles. The man looked Nelo up and down shamelessly. Well now, he said, smirking. Who is this beauty? Nelo's face hardened. Move. The man leaned closer instead. You're not from Umbraeth, are you? Good. I do love exotic things. Nelo visibly recoiled. I said move. The bully chuckled. Temper too. Even better. Nelo's patience snapped. He bared his sharp dragon fangs with a threatening hiss. Most men would have backed away in fear. Instead, the bully's eyes widened with twisted excitement. Oh. Dangerous too. Nelo looked disgusted. From behind them came a furious voice. Get away from him. Both turned. Polar strode forward, eyes blazing. The bully blinked in surprise before laughing. Well, well. Polar. He looked amused. This is new. You defending someone? He circled them slowly. You were always the one needing protection. Usually from Kaenar. Polar's jaw tightened. Leave. The man ignored him. Don't forget your place simply because the Emperor tolerates you now. Then he pointed at Nelo. I like this one. Step aside and let me take him. Polar moved in front of Nelo without hesitation. No. The bully's smile disappeared. He unsheathed a sword with a metallic hiss. You think I won't cut you down? Polar didn't move. Try it. The street around them began to tense. Then suddenly, the bully swung. Polar braced himself. But Nelo shoved him aside. The blade sliced across Nelo's arm. Blood splattered. Everyone froze. Even the bully looked horrified. I didn't mean. He panicked and ran. Polar stared at Nelo's bleeding arm in shock. Then anger exploded. You idiot. He grabbed Nelo and dragged him back home. Once indoors, Polar pushed him onto a chair and rushed for bandages and herbs. What were you thinking? Polar snapped. Why would you jump in front of a sword? Nelo hissed from the sting but glared back. Because you were too stubborn to move. Polar knelt and began treating the wound carefully. His hands, though irritated, were gentle. Nelo watched him silently. Polar kept muttering. I don't know why you're so angry, just acting up. Then Nelo suddenly pulled his arm away. Stop. Polar looked up. What? Stop doing things that give me ideas. Polar blinked. What ideas? Nelo took a breath, jaw tight. I know. Know what? That you like Kaenar. The room went still. Polar stared at him speechless. Nelo looked away. So don't keep treating me kindly. Don't worry over me. Don't make me misunderstand things. Polar opened his mouth but no words came. Nelo continued bitterly. We should keep our distance until Aarhiya and I find a way to leave Umbraeth. He stood. Then you'll be free. Polar frowned deeply. Nelo. My arm will heal fast, Nelo said without looking back. Then he walked away, leaving Polar standing there in stunned silence. Meanwhile, at the palace. Kaenar stood on his balcony, watching the courtyard below. There, Aarhiya was surrounded by maids, guards, and servants. He was laughing brightly as he poured alcohol into cups despite everyone protesting. We're not allowed. Then don't tell anyone, Aarhiya whispered dramatically. They laughed. Soon, even the strictest servants were drinking. Music started somewhere in the background. Smiles spread everywhere he went. Kaenar couldn't help smiling too. Aarhiya had changed the palace in ways no one else ever had. He brought life wherever he stood. Kaenar quietly returned to his chambers. He walked to a drawer and opened it carefully. Inside rested a velvet box. He opened it. A ring shimmered within, beautiful, ancient, elegant. It had belonged to his mother. Kaenar remembered her voice clearly. Give this only to the one you truly love. Someone kind. Someone whose heart brings warmth. He stared at the ring. Then smiled softly. He was so lost in thought that he didn't hear the door open. Toda stepped inside after receiving no answer. She stopped immediately when she saw the ring. Her eyes widened. Are you going to propose? Kaenar looked up, slightly embarrassed. Yes. Toda walked closer slowly. Already? Kaenar closed the box. I know how it sounds. It sounds reckless. He chuckled. Maybe. Then he became serious. But whether it is 1 day or 1 year, when you know the one, you know. Toadis studied his face. Then Kaenar's smile faded. I think I'm afraid. That surprised her. You? Afraid? He looked toward the window. I don't know why, but I feel like something is coming. His voice lowered. Like this happiness could be taken from me at any moment. He gripped the box tightly. So maybe I want to bind her to me before anything changes. Toadie's expression softened. Nothing will happen. She placed a hand on his shoulder. But if you truly mean this, then do it properly. Kaenar raised an eyebrow. The concubines. The elders. The people. They must know your decision. He scoffed. They can oppose all they want. Toadis smiled knowingly. You're not worried about them. Kaenar sighed. No. He looked at the ring again. I'm worried Xianxia won't accept. His voice was quieter now. That she won't choose to stay trapped in this desolate kingdom, with me. Toadis smiled gently. If she truly loves you. She touched the ring box. She would stay with you anywhere. Then she added warmly. Whether in heaven, or in hell. Back in the palace courtyard, the atmosphere was lively for once. Aarhiya sat cross-legged on the ground with several maids gathered around him, fully invested in a heated card game. No, 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 one maid cried dramatically. You cheated. Another maid pointed accusingly, always distracts people with that smile. That is a natural gift, Aarhiya replied proudly. The women burst into laughter. Even servants passing by slowed down just to watch. Ever since Aarhiya entered the palace, dull corners of the royal grounds had become places of laughter. Then suddenly, everything went silent. The maids straightened instantly. Cards dropped. Cups were hidden. Everyone bowed so fast it was almost comical. Aarhiya blinked and slowly turned around. Kaenar stood behind him. Dressed in dark royal robes, calm and unreadable as ever. Only his eyes betrayed amusement. Kaenar stepped forward, reached down, and took Aarhiya's hand. There is somewhere we need to go. The maids gasped silently. Aarhiya stared. Right now? Yes. Without another word, Kaenar gently pulled him along. The maids watched them leave with wide eyes. Soon, the two of them were climbing a steep hill beyond the palace grounds. Stone steps stretched endlessly upward through mist and ancient trees. Aarhiya was regretting many life choices. Why, he panted, does everything important in Umbraeth require climbing? Kaenar walked ahead effortlessly. It builds character. It builds suffering. Kaenar glanced back with the faintest smile. You complain too much. Aarhiya dramatically held his chest. This is how I go. On a staircase. Kaenar actually laughed under his breath. That alone made the climb worth it. Finally, they reached the top. Aarhiya straightened, and immediately forgot his exhaustion. Before them stood a magnificent temple-like structure carved from dark stone and silver crystal. Tall pillars lined the entrance. Ancient lanterns floated in the air like stars. Wind bells chimed softly from the roof. The place felt sacred. Timeless. Beautiful. Aarhiya stared in awe. This place. Kaenar's expression softened. It is the memorial hall of Umbraeth. He looked toward the towering doors. The resting place of past emperors. Aarhiya slowly turned to him. Why did you bring me here? Kaenar held his gaze. I am taking you to meet my mother. Aarhiya's heart skipped. Inside, the hall was even grander. Rows of memorial urns rested in carved alcoves, each marked with names and symbols of rulers long gone. Candles burned with blue flame. The silence was heavy, but peaceful. Kaenar led Aarhiya deeper into the chamber until they stopped before a beautifully adorned shrine. An elegant urn rested there, surrounded by silver flowers. Kaenar stood still for a moment. Then bowed his head. Aarhiya quietly followed. When Kaenar lifted his head again, his voice was lower than usual. "Mother." He took a breath. "I found someone." Aarhiya looked at him. Kaenar continued. "Someone I love." His words echoed softly in the sacred hall. "Someone I wish to keep by my side." Aarhiya felt his chest tighten. Kaenar then turned fully toward him. And from inside his robe, he brought out a small velvet box. Aarhiya froze. Kaenar opened it. Inside was the ring. Beautiful, regal, ancient. It shimmered with a pale glow. Kaenar held it out. "This belonged to my mother." Aarhiya's eyes widened. Then Kaenar said the words that made the entire world stop. "Marry me." Silence. Aarhiya stared at him in complete shock. Even Kaenar, fearless emperor of darkness, suddenly looked uncertain. Seeing Aarhiya speechless, Kaenar exhaled. "I know this is abrupt." He lowered his eyes briefly. "And selfish." That vulnerability in him was rare. "I know what I am asking means tying you here, to Umbraeth." His voice grew quieter. "But I could not think of another way to keep you beside me." Aarhiya's breath caught. Kaenar stepped closer. "I have never wanted anyone this much." He swallowed. "I have never been desperate for anyone's presence." Then more softly. "I want you as my family." Those words struck Aarhiya deeply. And pain followed right behind them. Because Kaenar stood there offering his whole heart. To a lie. He was loving Xianxia. Trusting Xianxia. Proposing to Xianxia. Not Aarhiya. Not the real him. Aarhiya's mind spiraled. Tell him now. Tell him the truth. Tell him before this goes further. But then he imagined it. Kaenar's face changing. The warmth vanishing. Shock. Hatred. Disgust. Betrayal. Aarhiya felt sick. And here, in front of Kaenar's mother's shrine, to shatter everything felt cruel. His eyes stung. Aarhiya looked up. His voice trembled. "Yes. I will marry you." For a moment, Kaenar simply stared. Then joy broke across his face so suddenly and so brightly that Aarhiya almost couldn't bear it. "Truly?" Aarhiya nodded. Kaenar laughed once in disbelief, then took his hand carefully like it was something precious. He slid the ring onto Aarhiya's finger. It fit perfectly. Kaenar lifted his hand and kissed it. Then he looked into Aarhiya's eyes and said softly, "My kingdom may be dark." He brought Aarhiya closer. "But I will fill your life with light." His voice deepened with sincerity. "I will make sure you are happy." Aarhiya forced a smile. But inside, his heart was breaking. By midday, the news had spread across Umbraeth like wildfire. Royal messengers rode through markets, villages, training grounds, and noble districts carrying the same announcement. The Emperor of Umbraeth shall marry the Sun Goddess and make her his Empress. People stopped in the streets. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Children ran after the messengers shouting questions. Old women clutched their chests in disbelief. Then, almost immediately, the kingdom erupted into discussion. Some were stunned. Some laughed in surprise. Some refused to believe it. But most of the common people received the news with excitement. The Sun Goddess. The one who glowed during the moon festival. The one who saved that child. If anyone should stand beside the emperor, it should be her. Many saw it as a sign of hope. The dark kingdom that had suffered for generations was finally changing. First, a person of light had appeared. Now, that same person would become ruler beside Kaenar. To them, it felt like destiny. Elsewhere, inside Polar's home, the atmosphere was far colder. Nelo sat at one side of the room sharpening a blade. Polar sat at another table, pretending to work on one of his potions. Neither had properly spoken since the day before. The tension was so thick it could be cut. Then voices from outside drifted in through the open window. The Emperor is really marrying the Sun Goddess. What? Truly? Nelo's hand paused. Polar's mixing spoon froze. For a moment, neither moved. Then Nelo resumed sharpening the blade like he hadn't heard anything. Polar returned to stirring his potion with unnecessary force. Still, the silence between them deepened. Neither of them wanted to admit what they were thinking. That things had now become far more complicated. Inside the women's quarters of the palace, the concubines had also gathered after hearing the announcement. Mina sat elegantly with a cup in hand, looking more amused than upset. "Well," she said. "That happened quickly." Some of the women nodded. Honestly, many of them were relieved. They had no desire to spend the rest of their lives fighting one another for Kaenar's attention when the man barely glanced at any of them. If Aarhiya had somehow captured his heart, then so be it. At least someone had succeeded. But not everyone was pleased. One concubine scoffed loudly. A servant? Another crossed her arms. A maid from nowhere becoming our empress? A third added bitterly, what exactly does she have that makes the emperor lose all sense? Mina sipped her drink lazily. A heart, perhaps. They glared at her. One woman hissed, "I refuse to bow to her." Another muttered, "Never." Mina only smiled. "You may refuse all you like. It will not change the fact that once the wedding happens, you'll kneel." That silenced the room. Meanwhile, in Aarhiya's chambers, Todi had completely taken over. Bolts of silk lay everywhere. Jewelry boxes were open. Maids moved in and out carrying fabrics, oils, perfumes, and accessories. Aarhiya stood in the center of it all looking overwhelmed. "Todi," he said weakly, "I can still dress myself." "No, you cannot." She adjusted the collar of an expensive robe with military precision. "You are no longer a servant." She stepped back to inspect him. "You are the future empress of Umbraeth." She snapped her fingers and another maid brought a sash. "You must now carry yourself with dignity." Another maid adjusted his sleeves. "With grace." A third fixed his hair. "With authority." Aarhiya sighed. As partner to the emperor, the entire kingdom, and perhaps lands beyond, will one day fall under your influence. The wedding will take place in 3 months. 3 months. Aarhiya repeated. There is much to prepare. Ceremonies, political rituals, noble invitations, security, garments, offerings. She narrowed her eyes. And in that time, you will be taught how to behave as royalty. Then, more gently, she asked, "What of your family?" The room became quieter. Aarhiya looked away. "I have no family. Even if I did, they wouldn't be able to cross the barrier." It was not fully true. But in the life he had now chosen, it felt true enough. Then he added softly, "Umbraeth will be my home from now on." Todi studied him for a moment but said nothing. Instead, she nodded and gave one final adjustment to his robe. Then she stepped back. The room fell silent. Even the maids looked impressed. Aarhiya stood dressed in flowing silver and pale gold silk, his features soft yet regal, graceful yet striking. He looked like someone born to a throne. Aarhiya stared at himself in the mirror. It was surreal. Just months ago, he had fled his own kingdom in disguise. Now he stood in another empire dressed like royalty. Todi slowly smiled. "Well." She folded her arms. "It seems royalty suits you." I had my reservations about you. He looked at her. But now, I think Kaenar may be right. Aarhiya's heart skipped. Before he could ask what she meant, Toda straightened again. Enough emotion. You are expected in the royal council hall. Toda gestures to the door. The maids escorted him out. Toda remained behind, watching him go. For the first time since meeting him, pride filled her chest. Whoever Aarhiya truly was. He had changed Kaenar. And perhaps, just perhaps, he might change Umbraeth too. The Royal Council Hall had never been known for peace. But today, it was absolute chaos. Voices thundered across the massive chamber. Elders stood from their seats, robes swaying as they shouted over one another. Noble ministers pounded staffs against the floor. At the center of it all, Kaenar sat on the imperial throne with a face that said he regretted waking up. His temples throbbed. His head ached. And the noise only kept rising. This is unacceptable. An outsider cannot become empress. A servant girl from nowhere. This insults noble blood. Kaenar slowly rubbed his forehead. He had faced wars. Rebellions. Assassins. Dark magic users. And somehow, this was still more exhausting. Several of the loudest voices belonged to elders whose daughters had been sent to the palace as concubines. One elder with a silver beard stepped forward angrily. My daughter has waited years in your palace. And now you choose a stranger. Another woman snapped her fan shut. Our noble daughters were good enough to be taken in, but not good enough to be chosen. Kaenar finally stood. The room quieted slightly. His voice was cold and sharp. Need I remind all of you of the agreement we made? He looked around the hall one by one. You begged me to accept your daughters into the palace. Some shifted uncomfortably. I agreed under one condition. He stepped down from the throne. That when the time came, I alone would choose my empress. Silence. Kaenar's gaze hardened. I have chosen. One elder tried again. But she is an outsider. Another added quickly, she is not of noble blood. She knows nothing of governance. She cannot bear the demands of ruling Umbraeth. Kaenar's expression darkened. My decisions are not open for debate. That silenced several mouths. Then he continued. However, the room leaned in. If worthy of being empress. He folded his hands behind his back. Then none of you will have grounds to oppose him. Several elders exchanged amused looks. One chuckled openly. Impossible. Another scoffed. Let us see this miracle then. Just then, the giant doors opened. A guard's voice rang out. Lady Xianxia has arrived. Kaenar immediately turned. Let her enter. The doors parted fully. And Aarhiya stepped inside. The entire hall went still. He was dressed in refined silk robes of pale silver and soft gold, elegant yet commanding. His hair had been arranged beautifully, and his calm expression made him look every bit royal. Even those determined to hate him were caught off guard. Several elders blinked. One whispered, she is striking. Another muttered, too striking. Kaenar's chest swelled with pride. Aarhiya walked gracefully across the chamber and stopped beside him. Then the shouting resumed. She looks pretty. That means nothing. Beauty is not qualification. Can she govern? Can she speak law? Can she negotiate land rights? One cunning elder stepped forward with a smirk. Very well. He folded his hands. If you would be empress, answer this. He launched into an obscure question regarding ancient palace inheritance customs, something only those raised in noble courts would know. Kaenar frowned. He expected Aarhiya to struggle. Instead, Aarhiya answered calmly. Flawlessly. The elder froze. Before he could recover, another noblewoman asked about tax rights between border provinces. Aarhiya answered that too. Then another asked about ceremonial hierarchy during mourning seasons. Then trade etiquette. Then wartime regency laws. Then diplomatic seating order. Question after question. Answer after answer. Perfect. Precise. Elegant. Soon, the hall fell silent. Everyone stared. Even Kaenar looked stunned. Because these were not things common people knew. These were the teachings of elite houses. The kind drilled into royal children from youth. One elder whispered to another. Who exactly is she? Another murmured. This is no ordinary servant. Kaenar recovered first. A slow proud smile spread across his face. He moved closer to Aarhiya and addressed the room. You wanted proof. He gestured toward him. There it stands. No one replied. If you still have doubts, question her another day. He reached for Aarhiya's hand and looked straight at him as he whispered. But you will not question my choice. With that, he turned and walked out of the hall with Aarhiya beside him, fingers entwined. The elders could only watch. Once outside in the palace corridor, Kaenar suddenly stopped walking. Aarhiya looked at him. What? Kaenar narrowed his eyes suspiciously. How did you know all of that? All of what? Those questions. He stepped closer. You answered like someone personally trained in palace politics. Aarhiya laughed nervously. I had noble friends. It's not a big deal. Kaenar studied him for a long moment. The answer clearly did not satisfy him. And right then, he realized something uncomfortable. He knew almost nothing about Aarhiya's real life. Later, the two entered the women's palace quarters. The harem had gathered after hearing the council drama. Some women looked curious. Others irritated. Some openly glared. One concubine muttered loudly enough to hear. So you ended up choosing the servant. Another said with a scoff. I expected more. Kaenar's gaze snapped toward them instantly. The room chilled. Choose your next words carefully. No one spoke. Even the rude ones lowered their eyes. Aarhiya gently touched Kaenar's arm. It's fine. But Kaenar still looked ready to banish someone. Fortunately, not everyone was hostile. Mina rose gracefully and smiled warmly. You survived the council. Barely, Aarhiya replied. She laughed. Then perhaps you truly are fit to rule. Kaenar relaxed slightly. Mina then turned serious. Your Majesty, may I ask a favor? Kaenar nodded. She took a breath. When you marry Aarhiya. She looked around at the other women. Please allow some of us to leave. The room became very quiet. Mina continued softly. You do not need to keep pleasing our families anymore. We were sent here for politics. Many of us never chose this life. We are tired. Tired of competing. Tired of waiting. Tired of being decorations. Kaenar's expression changed. For once, he looked remorseful. Then he nodded. After the wedding, I will grant freedom to any who wish to leave. Several women gasped. But not before then, he added. Your families may cause unnecessary problems. Mina smiled with relief. That is enough. Others began tearing up quietly. For many of them, hope had finally arrived. And as Aarhiya watched Kaenar speak with such certainty and kindness, the guilt inside him only grew heavier. As the days passed, the palace transformed into a place of constant movement. Servants hurried through corridors carrying bolts of silk, trays of jewels, ceremonial candles, flower garlands, scrolls, and invitations. Every room seemed to echo with preparations for the royal wedding. For Aarhiya, however, the excitement came with suffering. Because becoming future empress was apparently more exhausting than anything he could have imagined. Every morning, Todi would storm into his room with the energy of a military commander. Up. Aarhiya would groan into his pillow. I was asleep 5 seconds ago. You have duties. And so began the endless lessons. How to walk with royal composure. How to bow according to rank. How to greet nobles. How to host ceremonies. How to speak at state banquets. How to sit. How to stand. How to smile politely when annoyed. By midday, Aarhiya was usually ready to collapse. By evening, he often did. Several times, servants had to carry him back to his chambers while Todi complained loudly. Yet what stunned Todi most was this. Aarhiya already knew many of the rules. Not just basic etiquette. Advanced etiquette. Rare customs. Protocols forgotten by most nobles. Sometimes she would explain something only for Aarhiya to casually finish the explanation. Other times, she would test him, and he would answer flawlessly. One afternoon she stared at him suspiciously. Who exactly raised you? Aarhiya smiled nervously. I just lived a normal life. Todi narrowed her eyes. Still, that does not teach etiquette for 7 noble houses. Aarhiya coughed and looked away. The elders, however, refused to give up. If they could not stop the marriage directly, then they would expose Aarhiya as unworthy. So they arranged another private meeting. For weeks, they prepared obscure questions, historical traps, and ceremonial puzzles designed to humiliate him. They sat proudly when Aarhiya entered. Then they began. Questions about ancient treaties. Succession law. Diplomatic conduct. Temple taxation. Border disputes. Inheritance loopholes. Aarhiya answered every single one. Calmly. Elegantly. Sometimes correcting their phrasing. By the end of the session, several elders looked personally insulted. Inside, Aarhiya could barely stop himself from laughing. You prepared for weeks, to challenge the Crown Prince of Luminar, he smiled to himself. They had no idea. He had been groomed from birth in politics, law, history, economics, diplomacy, and statecraft. When it came to academics, Aarhiya had always excelled. Even Xianxia, his longtime rival, could never surpass him in scholarly matters. But unfortunately, in a world ruled by magic. Nothing else seemed to matter. Some of the elders secretly reported all of this back to advisor Durian. That only worsened his mood. His niece Xianxia still remained unconscious. His influence had been weakened. And meanwhile, Aarhiya continued to rise. The people adored him. He visited poorer districts quietly with palace escorts, giving food, blankets, coins, and medicine. He listened to widows. Played with children. Soon, stories spread everywhere. The future empress visited my mother. She paid for medicine. She repaired our roof. She remembered my child's name. Durian hated hearing it. Kaenar, on the other hand, found himself learning new things daily. The two now shared meals whenever possible, and he learned Aarhiya was quite picky. He could drink alcohol no matter what type, but when it came to meals, it was a totally different story. One dinner, Aarhiya picked through his plate with visible disgust. Kaenar noticed. What are you doing? Removing these peas. I hate peas. Another time, Aarhiya pushed away a spicy dish after one bite, eyes watering. You dislike spice? Kaenar asked. Aarhiya nodded, immediately downing cup after cup of water. Yet after that, Kaenar began quietly instructing the kitchen. No peas. Less spice. Whenever Aarhiya noticed, Kaenar would pretend not to care. But inwardly, he found every small habit of Aarhiya strangely endearing. Outside the palace, preparations for the wedding grew grander. Goods arrived nightly from neighboring cities. Silks, precious stones, rare flowers, exotic foods, wine, candles, furniture. Everything had to move under darkness. Because once daylight touched those outside Umbraeth's barrier, they would turn to dust. That was the curse of the kingdom. Only two emblems existed that allowed safe passage through the barrier at night. One belonged to the palace. The other to the chief merchant guild who conducted trade outside Umbraeth. Both had been created by Polar. Now, in his workshop, he was trying to make a third. One for Aarhiya. The workshop remained cold. Not physically. Emotionally. Since their last argument, Polar and Nelo had barely spoken. They moved around each other like strangers. Polar focused on tools and glowing metals. Nelo silently prepared herbs or sharpened blades. Neither acknowledged the tension. Until one afternoon, Nelo entered and noticed a brilliant silver emblem glowing on Polar's table. Despite himself, curiosity won. What is that? Polar looked up, surprised Nelo had spoken first. Then his face lit up. This? He held it proudly. One of my earliest creations. Nelo came closer despite himself. Polar continued enthusiastically. It stabilizes passage through the barrier. Before this, trade was nearly impossible. He spoke faster now, excited. For years, only Kaenar just like the previous emperors could safely pass through and bring others along, but only at night. That gave him too much responsibility. And if anything happened to him, everything would stop. So I created these. Nelo listened quietly. For all his chaotic personality, Polar truly was brilliant. Then Nelo said unexpectedly, "Let me help." Polar blinked. "You want to help me?" "Yes." Polar grinned instantly. "Of course." They worked side by side for hours. Then days. Filing metals. Channeling magic. Testing symbols. Correcting flaws. The old ease between them slowly returned, even if neither admitted it. At one point Polar finally asked, "You ignored me for days. Why help now?" Nelo kept working. "I want to go home." Polar's smile faded slightly. Nelo continued. "I cannot keep watching Aarhiya live a lie. We need to end this." Polar said nothing. But inside, the words stung more than expected. Still, he only nodded and pretended not to care. At last, the emblem was complete. It shone beautifully with layered runes and silver light. Polar held it up proudly. It worked. Nelo actually smiled. Before thinking, they both turned toward each other and embraced in relief. The moment lasted only seconds. Then both froze. Realizing what they were doing, they immediately stepped back. Polar cleared his throat. Nelo looked anywhere but at him. Polar forced composure. "We should go to the palace." He picked up the emblem. "The wedding is only a few days away." Nelo nodded quietly. And together, they set off. Inside the palace, Kaenar sat buried under responsibility. Scrolls were stacked endlessly across his desk. Apart from wedding preparations, there were reports, petitions, complaints, trade records, military updates. One after another, he read, signed, dismissed, or approved. His expression was calm, but his eyes were tired. He reached for another scroll. And then the doors burst open. Aarhiya walked in like a gust of fresh air. Kaenar lifted his head. Aarhiya stood there with his arms crossed, clearly unimpressed. "You've been in here for hours." Kaenar leaned back slightly. "I am the emperor. This is expected. And I am your future empress, Aarhiya shot back. Which means I can drag you out when you're overworking. Kaenar raised an eyebrow. Oh. Yes. Aarhiya walked up to him and stood across his table. We're going out. Kaenar's lips curved faintly. And what exactly are we going to do? Aarhiya smirked. You'll see. Moments later, they were standing in the training valley. Kaenar blinked slowly. This is where you brought me? Aarhiya turned excitedly. Yes. Kaenar's shoulders dropped slightly. Aarhiya caught it immediately. Wait, he narrowed his eyes. What were you expecting? Kaenar cleared his throat. Nothing. You had dirty thoughts. I did not. You absolutely did. You're disappointed. Kaenar smiled. Maybe a little. Aarhiya laughed, then stepped back and stretched. Well, too bad. I want a duel. Kaenar blinked again. A duel? Yes. I haven't properly tested my powers since, everything. He pointed at him. So you're going to fight me? Kaenar sighed. This is what you dragged me out here for? Yes. You could have just asked. That wouldn't have been dramatic. Kaenar shook his head but stepped forward anyway. Fine. The duel began. Aarhiya moved first, quick, determined, a spark of excitement in his eyes. He summoned his magic, light flickering around him as he launched an attack. Kaenar dodged easily. Too easily. Again, Aarhiya attacked. Again, Kaenar avoided him without effort. Not once did Kaenar strike back seriously. Not once did he go all out. Aarhiya stopped, breathing slightly heavier, frowning. Are you serious right now? Kaenar tilted his head. I am standing here, am I not? You're not fighting me. I am. No, you're not. Aarhiya threw his hands up. Where is that brutal instructor who used to make my life miserable? Kaenar smirked faintly. He retired. I want him back. He is unavailable. Aarhiya glared. Why are you holding back? Kaenar's expression softened. Because I don't want to hurt you. That only made Aarhiya more frustrated. I am not fragile. I know. Then fight me properly. Kaenar didn't move. Aarhiya sighed, then suddenly charged again. A sneak attack. Fast. Unexpected. But Kaenar reacted instantly. He caught Aarhiya mid-motion, spun him around. And instead of attacking, he pulled him close. And kissed him. Hard. Aarhiya froze for a second. Then melted. The duel was forgotten. Completely. Aarhiya kissed him back just as fiercely, grabbing onto him like he didn't want to let go. Kaenar smiled against his lips. Still want to fight? Aarhiya shook his head slightly. I surrender. Good choice. They lingered there for a moment, caught in each other. When they returned to the palace, reality was waiting. Nelo and Polar stood in the courtyard. Aarhiya stopped. Nelo. Kaenar frowned slightly. Polar. Polar stepped forward first with a polite smile. I came to wish you well before the wedding. Kaenar nodded. Thank you. Polar then added casually. May I speak with you privately? Kaenar hesitated for a second, then nodded. Meanwhile, Nelo turned to Aarhiya. Can we talk? Aarhiya nodded. They separated. In a quiet corner, Nelo faced Aarhiya. For a moment, he just stared at him. Then he exhaled. You've changed. You used to say no man would ever dominate you. And now? Nelo looked away. The Emperor has completely taken over your senses. Aarhiya laughed softly. That's love. Nelo's expression tightened. Love makes people lose their minds. Aarhiya's smile faded slightly. Yes. Then Nelo reached into his robe and brought out something. The emblem. It shimmered faintly in his hand. Aarhiya stared. What is that? A way out. Nelo placed it in his hand. This will allow us to leave Umbraeth safely. Aarhiya's breath caught. Nelo's voice softened. We have to go. Aarhiya shook his head immediately. No. We don't have time. I can't leave. You have to. I can't, Aarhiya repeated, his voice breaking. I'll betray him. I'll break his heart. Nelo's eyes filled with tears. We don't belong here. His voice trembled. Even if we want to stay, we can't. Aarhiya's grip tightened around the emblem. The spell is wearing off, Nelo continued. Your real identity will be exposed soon. Silence. There's no way we can stay, Nelo whispered. Aarhiya looked at him closely. You don't want to leave either, do you? That was all it took. Nelo broke. Tears spilled down his face. I don't, he admitted helplessly. Aarhiya's own tears followed. Neither of them could hold it in anymore. They pulled each other into a tight embrace and cried. For everything. For the lies. For the love. For the inevitable ending they were trying to avoid. Elsewhere, Polar and Kaenar stood facing each other. Polar's expression was calm, but serious. Are you sure about this wedding? Kaenar frowned slightly. What do you mean? You know nothing about Xianxia. Polar crossed his arms. How are you sure she's the one? Kaenar's voice softened. In the way she looks at me. Polar blinked. Kaenar continued. I can see it. The love. Polar went quiet. Kaenar noticed immediately. What's wrong? Polar sighed and looked away. Feelings. He paused. Are complicated. Kaenar studied him. But Polar didn't elaborate. The night before the wedding felt heavy. Aarhiya sat alone in the quiet of the sun garden, the soft glow of the lanterns barely cutting through the darkness. In his hand, the engagement ring shimmered faintly, beautiful, precious, and unbearably heavy. In the other, was the small emblem Polar had given him. 2 choices. 2 futures. And only one he could take. He let out a shaky breath, his chest tightening. If I leave like this, without telling him the truth, will I ever forgive myself? The thought alone made his heart ache. Polar's words echoed in his mind, get to the barrier before the wedding. We'll be waiting. Everything had already been planned. All Aarhiya had to do, was run. But why did it feel so wrong? Before he could spiral any further, he felt a presence behind him. Xianxia. His body stiffened. Kaenar. Quickly, Aarhiya regained his composure and slipped the emblem out of sight. By the time he turned around, he forced a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. You're still awake? Kaenar asked, walking closer, his voice soft but laced with concern. I could ask you the same, Aarhiya replied lightly, though his voice betrayed him. Kaenar studied him carefully. What are you doing out here? Aarhiya hesitated, then patted the space beside him. Sit with me. Kaenar didn't question it. He sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was full. Heavy. Fragile. Then Aarhiya turned to him. His eyes softened, and his voice dropped to something almost vulnerable. I love you. Kaenar blinked, caught off guard. Aarhiya rarely said it first. Xianxia. Aarhiya held his gaze, as if trying to memorize every part of his face. No matter what happens, he continued quietly, don't ever think that I didn't love you. Not even for a second. Now Kaenar frowned, confusion settling in. What do you mean by that? But Aarhiya just smiled, too quickly, too lightly. It's nothing, he said, brushing it off. You think too much. Before Kaenar could press further, Aarhiya lifted his flute and began to play. The melody was soft, but there was something broken in it. Something aching. Kaenar watched him closely, his chest tightening as he noticed the tears silently streaming down Aarhiya's face. He didn't stop him. He just sat there, listening. Worried. A few days later, the entire kingdom of Umbraeth was alive with celebration. This was no ordinary wedding. It was the Emperor's wedding. Drums echoed through the streets, dancers filled the air with energy, and people lined the roads, cheering loudly as Kaenar rode through the kingdom in full regal attire. His presence was commanding, powerful, yet there was a rare lightness to him today. People threw their garments onto the ground in reverence, bowing as he passed. Long live the Emperor! Long live the Empress! The chants filled the air. Finally, Kaenar returned to the palace, where even grander celebrations awaited him, music, laughter, colors everywhere. But beneath it all, there were eyes watching him. The elders. Silent. Unimpressed. Resentful. Kaenar ignored them. Today wasn't about them. He walked past them without a second glance and made his way to the grand wedding hall, where everything had already been prepared. All that was left was Aarhiya. Meanwhile, in his chambers, Aarhiya stood frozen. Dressed in stunning bridal garments, he looked nothing short of breathtaking. The rich fabric flowed elegantly around him, every detail carefully crafted. But inside, chaos. His hands trembled slightly. I can't do this. The thought finally broke through. I can't marry him like this, he whispered to himself. Tears welled up again. I can't keep lying to him. His chest tightened painfully. No, I have to tell him. Even if it destroyed everything. Even if Kaenar hated him. Even if it cost him his life. At least, it would be the truth. With sudden determination, Aarhiya turned and rushed out of the room. But the moment he stepped into the corridor, he stopped. Yami stood there, waiting. Oh, she said sweetly, tilting her head. Where are you rushing to? Aarhiya barely spared her a glance. I don't have time. He moved past her. But the moment his back turned, her lips curled into a slow, chilling smile. Dark energy flickered in her eyes. Such a pity, she murmured. Before Aarhiya could even react, a sudden force hit him. His body went rigid. His vision blurred. And in the next second, he collapsed to the ground. Unconscious. Yami knelt over him, her smile widening, dark and satisfied. Now, she whispered softly, let's see how this wedding unfolds without you. Aarhiya's eyes fluttered open slowly, his head pounding like something heavy had been pressing down on his mind. For a moment, everything was blurry. Cold. Silent. Then it all rushed back at once. He tried to move, but froze. His arms, his legs. He couldn't move them. Invisible restraints tightened around his body, holding him in place like chains made of air. Panic surged through him as his breathing quickened. His voice came out weak, trembling. The darkness around him began to take shape. A dim, eerie glow revealed the space he was in, a dungeon. Cold stone walls. The faint smell of blood and damp earth. And then, figures. They were standing around him. Watching him. Aarhiya's eyes widened in horror as he recognized them one by one. Yami. She stood there, smiling. But it wasn't the soft, quiet smile he knew. This one was different. She seemed cruel, bloodthirsty. Beside her stood Advisor Durian, his usual composed expression twisted into something darker. And then, Aarhiya's breath caught. Lenrea? She stepped forward slowly, her lips curling into a satisfied smile. Surprised, she asked, her tone dripping with mockery. You should be. Aarhiya shook his head weakly, disbelief written all over his face. You were unconscious, you. I woke up a little while ago, she cut in, her eyes narrowing. And I had to lie there, helpless, while you took everything that was meant to be mine. Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with anger. Do you have any idea what that felt like? She continued, stepping closer. Watching you, take his attention, his affection, his throne, and the crown, everything I worked so hard for. Aarhiya swallowed hard, his chest tightening. I didn't. Enough, she snapped sharply. Her expression hardened. Today, it ends. She straightened, her voice cold and final. You've caused me enough pain. Enough humiliation. Tonight, you die. Aarhiya's heart dropped. No, please, don't do this, he said quickly, panic rising. You don't understand, I'm not your enemy. I never. A sudden shift in the air cut him off. A heavy presence. Dark. Overwhelming. The room seemed to grow colder. Slow footsteps echoed as a figure emerged from the shadows. Clad in a hood. Face hidden. But power radiating from him like a storm. Aarhiya's breath hitched as the man stepped forward. So, the figure said calmly, his voice low and dangerous, we finally meet. Aarhiya stared at him, confused, afraid. Who are you? The man tilted his head slightly. You've been quite the inconvenience since you arrived, he continued, ignoring the question. A disruption we did not anticipate. He stepped closer, the darkness around him almost alive. But no matter, he added. We'll fix that, now. Aarhiya struggled against the invisible bindings again, his voice breaking. Please, just let me go. I'm not a threat. Kaenar must be looking for me. A faint chuckle escaped the man. Kaenar, he repeated. You think he matters in this? Then his tone dropped. You, he said, pointing directly at Aarhiya, are the problem. Aarhiya froze. What? You carry the blood of the dechrist. The name hit Aarhiya like a shockwave. Dechrist? I've spent centuries wiping them out, the man continued, his voice filled with dark satisfaction. One by one. Every last trace of them erased. He leaned in slightly. And now, the final one stands before me. Aarhiya's mind spun. I don't understand. You don't need to, you just need to disappear, once and for all, the man snapped. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. Dark energy gathered around it, thick, violent, suffocating. I'll enjoy this, he said quietly. Aarhiya's heart pounded wildly. No. The attack came fast. A surge of dark magic shot toward him. But before it could touch him, boom! A blinding golden light exploded from Aarhiya's body. It was sudden. Violent. Beautiful. Like the sun itself had been unleashed. The dungeon filled with searing light as flames of golden energy burst outward, slamming into everyone around him. Arg! Screams echoed as the demons were thrown back, their bodies burning under the intensity of the light. Even the hooded man staggered, shielding himself. The invisible restraints snapped instantly. Gone. Aarhiya dropped to the ground, gasping, his entire body trembling. He looked at his hands in shock, the golden fire still flickering brightly around him. I did that. But there was no time. Get him, the hooded man roared, recovering quickly. Don't let him escape. That snapped Aarhiya out of it. He pushed himself up and ran. Fast. Barefoot against the cold stone floor, heart racing, breath uneven, he didn't look back. Behind him, footsteps. Voices. Yami. Lenrea. Others. The entire dungeon seemed to come alive as they pursued him. Aarhiya turned corners blindly, desperation fueling him. I have to get out. I have to. Back in the dungeon, the hooded man, Sakador, stood still, his jaw clenched. He lowered his hands slowly, frustration evident. Not enough energy, he muttered. His eyes darkened. But soon, his lips curled into a chilling smile. When darkness consumes everything, I'll have all the power I need. Meanwhile, at the palace, everything was ready. The grand hall shimmered with decorations, filled with nobles, ministers, and citizens. All waiting. At the center of it all stood Kaenar, dressed in his regal wedding attire. Perfect. Composed. But as time passed, that composure began to crack. His eyes kept shifting toward the entrance. Waiting. Where is she? He muttered under his breath. Whispers began to spread across the hall. What's taking so long? Is the bride not ready? This is strange. Kaenar's jaw tightened. Something wasn't right. Just then, Your Majesty. Todu rushed in, breathless, panic written all over her face. Kaenar turned immediately. What is it? She hesitated for a split second, then leaned in and whispered. Xianxia is missing. Everything stopped. For Kaenar. The world went silent. What? Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the hall. Fast. Urgent. Ignoring the calls behind him. He reached Aarhiya's chambers in seconds and threw the door open. Xianxia. Silence. The room was empty. Cold. Still. Kaenar's chest tightened painfully. No. He stepped inside slowly, looking around like he might find him hiding somewhere. Nothing. His hands clenched. Find her, he suddenly roared, his voice echoing through the palace. Search everywhere. Guards scrambled immediately. But Kaenar stood frozen for a moment, his breathing uneven. A single thought kept repeating in his head. Over. And over. And over. Did she leave me? The thought hit harder than anything else. 10. Aarhiya's lungs burned as he ran. Branches scratched against his skin, roots nearly tripping him with every step, but he didn't dare slow down. Behind him, the forest felt alive with danger, dark energy crackling, shadows twisting unnaturally as the demons chased him relentlessly. Stop running. Lenrea's voice rang out, sharp and furious. You can't escape. Aarhiya didn't look back. He couldn't. If he did, he knew fear would swallow him whole. Instead, he focused on the faint glow ahead. The barrier. Hope. His hand trembled as he reached into his inner cloth, pulling out the emblem. It felt cold in his palm, but it was the only thing standing between him and freedom. I just have to make it, he whispered breathlessly. Just a little more. But fate wasn't going to make it that easy. A sudden blast of dark magic struck the ground in front of him, forcing him to stumble back. Before he could regain his balance, Lenrea and Yami appeared, blocking his path, their eyes glowing with deadly intent. You're not going anywhere, Yami said coldly. Lenrea smirked, her voice dripping with malice. Did you really think it would be that simple? Aarhiya's heart pounded wildly as they attacked. Dark energy surged toward him. But just before it could hit. Boom. A brilliant golden light exploded from his body. It flared like the sun itself, fierce and untouchable, forming a shield around him. The force of it sent several demons flying back, their screams echoing through the forest. Lenrea and Yami were thrown off balance, their bodies slamming into the ground. Aarhiya stared at his hands, shaken. That power again. But there was no time to think. He clenched his fists, forcing himself forward. With a desperate cry, he summoned the magic again, this time directing it outward. A blast of golden energy tore through the air, hitting the demons and scattering them. The two women finally collapsed, barely conscious. Aarhiya didn't wait. He turned and ran. And this time, he made it. The barrier stood before him, glowing faintly, separating Umbraeth from everything beyond it. And just beyond it, two familiar figures. Aarhiya. Nelo shouted, rushing forward, eyes wide with shock. What happened to you? Polar's expression darkened immediately as he spotted the approaching demons. What on earth? No time, he said sharply. We have to move, now. Aarhiya nodded quickly, his hands shaking as he reached for the emblem again. But the moment his fingers brushed against his clothes, his heart dropped. No. He searched frantically. Again. And again. It's not here, his voice cracked. I lost it. What? Nelo's face paled. A distance away, the demons were already recovering, their growls growing louder as they charged forward again. Polar cursed under his breath. Damn it, fine, he said, stepping forward. His expression hardened, completely serious now. I'll hold them off. No. Nelo grabbed his arm immediately. We're not leaving you. You don't have a choice. Polar snapped to him. If you stay, we all die. With a swift motion, he slammed his hand against the ground. A powerful wall of magic rose instantly, shimmering and solid, blocking the demon's path. They crashed against it, snarling, clawing, trying to break through. Go. Polar yelled. I'll buy you time. The wall trembled under the demon's assault. It wouldn't last long. Nelo's eyes filled with tears. I'm not leaving you behind. Polar grabbed his shoulders, his voice softer now, but firm. If anything happens to you, I won't be able to live with it. That was when it broke Nelo. Tears spilled down his cheeks as he suddenly pulled Polar closer. And kissed him. It was quick. Desperate. Unplanned. But it froze Polar completely. By the time he processed what had just happened, Nelo had already pulled away, breathing shakily. Don't die, he whispered. Then he turned. And ran. Aarhiya, come on, he called out, grabbing his hand. They both ran toward the barrier. Tears streamed down Aarhiya's face as he stepped forward, his voice breaking. Please, he whispered, placing his hand against it. Let me leave Umbraeth. For a moment. Nothing happened. Then. The barrier began to glow. Softly. Gently. As if, responding to him. Aarhiya's breath caught. He tightened his grip on Nelo's hand. And together. They stepped forward. The barrier rippled. And let them pass. Light. Blinding, warm, overwhelming light engulfed them instantly. A sudden surge of energy washed over Aarhiya. The disguise spell shattered. Light burst around him, and when it faded, Xianxia was gone. Aarhiya stood there once more. His real self. Nelo fell to his knees, crying openly. But Aarhiya didn't move. He slowly turned back toward the barrier. His eyes searched it desperately. As if hoping. Just hoping. He might still see him. Kaenar, he whispered. But there was nothing. Back in Umbraeth. Kaenar sat in Aarhiya's empty room, his chest rising and falling unevenly. His mind refused to accept it. No. Behind him, far away in the forest. Polar stood alone before the breaking barrier. Cracks spread across his magic as the demons pushed through, their laughter echoing darkly. The fate of all four of them now hung in uncertainty. Thanks for watching. How do you see this episode? Can you predict what will happen in the next one? But before then, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss recent updates. Lots of love you all.